A lot has been said about the limited involvement of the U.S. in the Syrian refugee crisis, but with today's announcement, the U.S. has become the biggest single provider of humanitarian help in this issue. I'm talking about the United States giving out $420 million in humanitarian aid to assist Syrian refugees, this to the UN and other organizations. Nick, I think this is very important. This comes on the heels of Secretary of State John Kerry announcing that we're going to raise our annual refugee caps from 70,000 to 85,000 next year and up to 100,000 by 2017.
Wow, extremely interesting. You know, you said that we've been critiqued a lot, right? But so have other countries as well. Like, for example, I've openly criticized Saudi Arabia for not doing enough on this program a few different times and in a few different stories. But in reality, they've given a lot of money. What I was criticizing is the fact that they haven't taken in that many.
Exactly.
So when you give money, it kind of goes a little bit, under the radar. It's not as, here I'm opening my doors. You see, all over the media the refugees arriving. You don't see that kind of stuff, right? You don't really see it, and it's not as open, and you don't get as much praise for it because it's kind of, like I said, under the table, under the radar. So there's a lot of countries that are doing this, but it goes unnoticed a lot of the time.
The reality is that since 2011, the U.S. have provided almost $4.5 billion in humanitarian help for the Syrian crisis. Now, we have 7 million internally displaced in Syria. We have almost 4 million displaced in Europe, and they're saying you're not taking enough. For that, the White House spokesman, John Earnest, came out today and said the solution is not taking these refugees in. The solution is creating the stability on the region for them not to have to flee away. And for that, he said the main thing is to end the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And I think this is very important. It's very important that the White House spokesman comes out and states that direction of solving the problem inside, not necessarily raising and raising. Because people said in Congress that we can actually manage up to 100,000 refugees by year. But like you said, that's kind of a band-aid. Yes, we can take 100,000, but what about the rest of the 12 million that they're going to be displaced? And if we continue the involvement in war, if we continue the involvement of the destabilization of the region, this is a never-ending problem. We're going to keep displacing people till we actually go on site. Like you mentioned, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has more power than the U.S. to actually make a difference in the region, to actually make a difference creating the conditions of peace for them not to be displaced. But at the same time, human rights situations, sectarian violence. There's a lot of complex issues that come together with the refugee crisis.
Yeah, without a doubt. But speaking of ongoing things that just never end and seem to be this vicious cycle, look, I'm calling bullshit on our whole idea of Syria right now. Our whole idea is we get Assad out and everything will be perfect. Little do we know, this all came about during the Arab Spring when things started to get bad and people wanted him out. What about Gaddafi in Libya? What happened? We took him out and everything just became perfect because we were sick and tired of this tyrant there. We take him out and everything's going to be fine. We're going to replace him with a new government. Oh, guess what? That didn't really work out. And I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record because I'm always going back to Libya. I'm always going back to Iraq. And I'm always making these comparisons. But getting Assad out isn't necessarily the one-stop, fix-all solution. Yeah. I mean, we need, I hate to say this, I'm going to sound like some sort of devil because the second that you say that, we should cooperate with Assad, it's like, oh no, you're evil. But I don't think that's the case. I think some cooperation is needed because the guy has clearly made it very clear that he's stubborn. He's not going to get out of power just because these Western puppets that, we're trying to make him another puppet. That's how he sees it. Just because they want me out doesn't mean I'm going to get out. So why don't we cooperate with them, get rid of the threat, save these people's lives, and then we'll worry about a regime change.
I mean, it's a very complex issue, like you mentioned. Now we have Russia getting involved, actively sending troops and sending
don't help fight ISIS, Russia.
Exactly.
Only we can do it.
But the thing is that, like you mentioned, this is the cost of intervention. This is the cost of a policy, exterior policy, of going and trying to impose laws, impose governments, and then we have internal conflict, civil war, because people that live there are not there like puppets waiting for someone else to come and say, now you're going to live under these rules. You take the elected rulers out of the equation, and what's happened? You have instability in the region. But we want to know your opinion. Please share it below in the comments. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the Lib TV 2.